A lot has been spoken about Russia-Ukraine war. Countries like India, China and Turkey kick-started the process of brainstorming to think of solutions to put an end to the war. Under the leadership of Trump, US too actively jumped into the process, desperately hunting for solutions to establish peace. However, it's interesting to know if history could have been changed. Could East European nations have come together and struck a peaceful accord with Russia? It's interesting to know if Ukraine's ambition to become a NATO member was a big mistake. Let's take a look at the background of East European nations. East European nations are distinctly different from West European nations. All these nations experienced holocausts inflicted by Germany, which is a part of the European Union and NATO today. The East European nations, after Germany's defeat, were subjected to Russian hegemony and practically lost sovereignty, and each nation was headed by a puppet of choice made by Moscow to become a part of the Russian Empire. Russia enjoyed the wealth of all the resources of East European nations, keeping them under the iron grip of dictators chosen by Moscow. This resulted in getting these nations pushed into poverty, hampering industrial development and modernization. Experts point out that Russia, as a result, emerged as a superpower, which remarkably progressed in the field of science, technology, nuclear arms, and so on and so forth. Although all this at the cost of democratic rights to common man, which were brutally curbed with the help of KGB, army, and police, with no such information allowed to be published, keeping the rest of the world guessing what must be cooking in Russia all the time. However, the situation completely changed when Mikhail Gorbachev of Russia launched radically liberal programs under Glasnost and Perestroika, meaning transparency and restructuring, terms coined by himself that got wide publicity across the world and were obviously appreciated by the West. This resulted in the end of the USSR, and all East European nations were liberated and became independent. This Eastern Bloc, at least the major players like Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria and other like-minded nations, in my opinion, should have come together to form a separate conglomeration on the lines of EU. Maybe it could have been called as EEU. Instead of reaping benefits of the newly acquired independence, these nations were busy in squabbles, civil war, resulting in splitting of nations, a classic case being of erstwhile Czechoslovakia. Some of them developed a strong desire to join NATO. Few were successful, like recently included Sweden and Finland. Ukraine too had been campaigning to get included in NATO. But either NATO countries were playing games with Ukraine or they were scared of Russia's reaction. Experts highlight that Russia was scared with the fact that Ukraine was steadily progressing towards acquiring a NATO membership. As a preemptive action, Russia started invading and struck a war. This resulted in complete devastation in Ukraine with a lot of human loss. And despite all this, NATO membership looks too far from achievement. The ongoing peace talks are very far from being successful. Ukraine is caught in a miserable and hopeless situation, with the US stopping aid to Ukraine and Europe and UK willing to help but having no capacity to support Ukraine to cope with its struggle for survival. The situation could have been avoided by forming an alliance of East European nations. Even now they can think on these lines. East European nations can strike a security deal with Russia, not at the cost of sovereignty, however, keeping business relationship with the West reasonably smooth at the same time. However, ideal scenarios are too far from reality. What culminates often due to the overambitious nature of human beings is a conflict that wipes out innocent civilians who have very little to do with the high-flying ambitions of the higher-ups.